bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. Make it the cutest that I've ever seen. Hey guys, welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank with a round of comment chat. And our Funko today, we forgot one last time, but then again, we had a very nice beard. It's almost like I went down on an elf. But anyway, our Funko today is Tink. Big Tink. Alright. Oddly enough, as soon as I found this one, they released the Peter Pan ones. So, kind of upset about that. But anyway, enough about my problems. Let's talk about these books. So, among all the things we could have talked about, there was this sort of new wave of books that came out. Well, wave is a strong word. There's only three. But, with the whole Jeff Johns and the whole returning of the JSA and the legacy of superheroes, DC decided, well, let's bring something out from that. All right, let's bring stuff like Sandman, who showed up in Night Terrors that really should have been out in October mess, and we just brought back Judy Garrick, or we made up Judy Garrick, or we remembered, hey, Jay Garrick had a sidekick. It was his daughter. Let's roll with that and bring her back. And even Alan Scott, who we've been playing around with and sort of doing stuff with and not doing stuff with since New 52 started, but whatever. So they decided to do something with those characters, and we may get more in the future, but right now we only have three. Our first one is Wesley Dodds Sandman, written by Robert Venditti and art by, oh my god, Riley Rosmo. So, let's be clear. Riley Rosmo is possibly my least favorite artist. Alright, and I don't really go into art on comic books, because usually if I like it, I'll keep going. If it's alright, I'll keep going. If it's just sort of, I just can't. So I held off on reading the Tim Drake book because of Riley Rosmo's art. It's better suited for horror, but for like the everyday sort of thing, I just don't think it works. Like that special he did for the 1 minute anniversary was terrible. Couldn't look at it. His one Flash just couldn't. His one for the Robin King, which was a very horror sort of psychopathic Bruce Wayne, that was very good. I think that art suited that story. I don't think he's suited for something that should appear to be very, maybe not necessarily bright or happy, but something that should feel sort of by the books normal. Alright? If it's normal, I don't want Riley Rosmo drawing it. But whatever. Venditti is a good enough writer that I'm willing to read just about anything he does, regardless of the art. Let's see here, because his Green Lantern was really good. Really good. Which is weird, because the Green Lantern work before that, I wasn't that fond of. Maybe I need to revisit it. I don't know. But anyway, let's get to the story. So, those who don't know, Sandman is one of the original JSA members. His real name is Wesley Dodds. It's actually right there on the cover, too. Wesley Dodds, the Sandman. And I do not believe the song Mr. Sandman had any real impact on his character, but he does sort of have something a bit similar to it. But anyway, let's get to it. This takes place shortly after the Great War. Well, not shortly after the Great War, but after the Great War. After World War One, we're not quite at. We're probably on World War Two. We are on World War Two. So we see him going through, giving vigilante justice, a la what we could expect from characters like Batman, Night Owl, and probably the Question. Green Arrow? No, he's not shooting arrows, and he's not green. So anyway, he goes through and he uses his gas to sort of instill fear, hallucinations, also to sort of appease his targets, make them more compliant, so that way they can get information out of them. Bit unethical, but then again, it's not going to court, so whatever. And one thing Wesley Dodds talks about is the dreams he's been having. Really dreams about the JSA. So that's an interesting idea. He's having dreams about the multiverse. Or the future. Something that hasn't happened yet. It's happened. My dreams about the future are actually just so boring. I'm at work. Oh, I dreamed I was at work. Look at that. But anyway, he's also been having nightmares about stories his father told him in World War One. Or the Great War, as it's called, because, we didn't think there'd be a sequel. And the stories of people succumbing to gas, to gas attacks seems to have really just traumatized Wesley, and that makes sense. Why you would tell your child that story is beyond me, but whatever. It's not the worst origin story. But what's interesting about Wesley is that right now, in addition to those nightmares, he's sort of not interested in doing this anymore. Or at the very least, he wants to try to have a bigger impact on society, and he's really concerned about the war in Europe. So, in reality, World War II is underway. All right, but it's not a world war yet. So what he really wants to do is he wants to make a deal with the military for some to get some new technology going that will hopefully make maybe not an end to the war, but make it easier. All right, as well as prevent deaths. Wesley Dodds is someone who's very traumatized by the events of the Great War and the stories, and I think he just wants it'd be really nice if we just stop people dying. If there was a better way to do it. And so Wesley getting ready for this. His girlfriend Diane points out, I know the night's over because I get to see you. I'm like, okay. He's doing better than Batman already. He has a girlfriend during the day. And she sort of, helps encourage him for his big meeting. Like, hey, look, I wouldn't date you if you weren't always dapper. All right. I'm like, all right, great. She's like a better, more supportive Catwoman. She likes Sue, didn't he? Anyway, so he goes to his meeting, and it really doesn't work over well. It points out that, hey, this whole thing is supposed to just knock them out, and there's no problems. But the general points out, hey, the logistics of having to carry them around and taking them somewhere safe and whatnot, and it's like you can't really do that in war. They don't really have the funds or the means to do that. And so, the best and most effective way is to kill him. And that sucks. Wes is a bit down. You only have so many chances to get that stuff out of the way. And he just sort of blew his first one because they're not interested. All right? Nothing he could have done differently out of that, because the way they view the war is the only way to win is to destroy the enemy. All right? So anyway, he's taken to a party. Everyone's having fun. He gets to meet Rex Tyler, the creator of, was it Miracle, the drug that'll make someone super strong and super fast, whatnot, for an hour. Just super strong, actually. But it's interesting because we'll see these two play a bigger role in the JSA going forward, especially their kids. So there's that. As a matter of fact, we'll be dealing with Our Man, at least an Our Man from the future in Stargirl Lost Children. So there's that. So Wesley needs some time to sort of get away from it all. He's feeling like pretty much a colossal failure. And meanwhile, everyone in there is celebrating success. It really sort of feels like that scene of The Great Gatsby where everybody's at that party and Tom feels like, you know what? Everyone else here kind of is doing stuff, and yeah. So he goes off and, he leaves his hot girlfriend for the night. She's off like, I'll go with you. No, you're the star of the night. You stay, I'll send the car after you, when you're ready to go. And Wesley does what pretty much every superhero needs to when he needs, some time. He goes off and decides to beat up people. Luckily, as per every crime story, there's crime. So he goes in, roughs some stuff up, and does it make him feel better? Probably not, but it helps him let loose some steam. Wesley Dodds strikes me as someone who is very controlled, very professional in his day-to-day life, and really comes off as someone very timid. So here he's able to sort of let loose with some degree of control over himself. He's not going around killing people. As he does that, he sees the fire department go off. He's like, what? Fire? Down the street? Holy crap, that's my house. And that's how the comic ends. So ultimately, Wesley Dodds' Sandman is alright. To be fair, Riley Rosmo's art has gotten better. I'm not sure if he's pulled back a little. Maybe his time with Megan Fitzmartin on that Robin book has sort of helped him sort of pull back a bit. I'm not entirely sure. I will read that Robin book eventually, so we'll see. We'll see how we feel about that. Ultimately, I am willing to give this another work. I think Venditti paints an interesting picture of Wesley Dodds. As someone who does not know Wesley Dodds at all, I have no real opinion, nor do I think my opinion should carry any weight to anyone who actually knows Wesley Dodds. Do I even have a Sandman comic? Do I? I don't even have Neil Gaiman's Sandman. That's not him, by the way. That's not. Overall, though, I think really fun, and I do look forward to seeing more. Next is a controversial book. Well, is controversial the right word? I think it was the book that generated the most buzz at the time, or rather, the characters had a lot of buzz around him. Alan Scott, Green Lantern by Tim Sheridan. Tim Sheridan, he wrote some of that Flashpoint Beyond book by Jeff Johns. And so if you like that, in its entirety, you might enjoy Tim Sheridan's writing. I could take a leave Flashpoint Beyond, which had nothing to do with how it was written. It just felt unnecessary. And was once again part of a bigger story Jeff Johns was weaving, so maybe it all fits better when we look at it, in its entirety. Granted, since JSA has been delayed again, well, that's been delayed. Next issue was delayed till next month. Now it's delayed till 2024. So who knows? I'm just gonna have to do that timeline video now, I guess. Anyway. So Alan Scott Green Lantern has been like the only member of the JSA that gets any sort of real attention outside of maybe Dr. Fate. But Dr. Fate isn't directly connected to the JSA. He's one of those original members, but he isn't really as tethered to the JSA. He's got Justice League Dark. He can fit in just about anywhere. Alan Scott as the first Green Lantern doesn't really fit with the Green Lanterns. Like, his powers don't quite match up. For example, he can't do anything to wood. And it was later revealed that his power comes from the Starheart, which is connected to the Green Lantern Corps. But for the most part, no. The big thing about Alan, though, is that when New 52 started, he and the rest of the JSA were taken out of continuity of the DC universe. There was no JSA in the main Earth. And then we go to the book Earth 2 by James Robinson, which is a very fun book. It's a creative idea. And that book had the Trinity, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, be the original first generation of heroes. And then the JSA comes in after the events of the battle with Darkseid. So, yeah, that was a creative idea. But the thing about Alan was, in addition to being, considered the most powerful of the JSA, which is, I think, true in most iterations, or at least one of the bigger ones, he's gay. And this was a weird thing for people because, well, you got rid of Alan in the main continuity, do another continuity book, to another book out of continuity in its own separate Earth where this Alan Scott is gay. People are like, okay, sure, but what about his son? So that Alan didn't have a son, so it worked out because he was a proud gay man. So it was a thing. All right, no one really cared that much, but it was just sort of weird. They revamped this and we'll make this one gay. And it was also weird because one of Alan Scott's more interesting stories and ideas was the fact that he had to come to terms with his son being gay. It was a thing. He had to deal with it. He and Obsidian had a falling out over it. And they were just now starting to, reconnect as father and son. That was a really great idea. So then Earth 2 happens. Alan Scott's gay boyfriend dies. Boyfriend to fiance dies. And then he becomes Green Lantern for that story as a champion of the green. Then nothing happens outside of Convergence, and we never really see that Alan Scott again. Then we cut to Alan Scott being seen in the pages of Scott Snyder's Justice League, which was actually a really great Justice League run. The bigger story he was telling, I think, sort of fell apart due to the scale of what he was trying to do. But whatever. Like most Scott Snyder books, even his worst one is usually a glorious fire. All right, you just wasn't a great story, but it was fun. It was fun. So he doesn't do much in that one. I think there is a bit of an implication that he might be in that one, but nothing about that too long. There's also his appearance in the Injustice Year Zero story, where the JSA is a fixture in that universe. And we found out what happened to them, and the general consensus is, had the JSA been there, the events of Injustice might not have happened, all right, or at least been as bad. It might have been stopped then and there. But who knows? In that story, Alan Scott is gay, and it is what it is. I think for the most part, people just didn't like the change in general. Comic fans tend to not like changes to status quo. To take away Alan's well, to change Alan's sexuality did sort of change his family. Like in other stories where Alan's always been gay, by default, Obsidian and Jade never existed. So there's that. Some stories have gone with the idea that, hey, he's been closeted for a while. He's had trouble wrestling with his sexuality for a long time. And, even got married and had kids. And he's now finally able to admit it to his kids in the pages of, what was it, New Frontier? That he's like, hey, yeah, kids, I'm gay. And that was, by that point, I think fans were just kind of done. Um, like I said, for someone who grew up in the 30s, who lived through the 30s, yeah, you weren't talked about it. It just sort of was. But anyway, so that was kind of it for Alan. All right, he announced he came out, and New Frontier did New Frontier things, and no one really cared. Whatever. So here we are, his own book. It's been a while since he had his own book. So what's this book about? Well, we start off with the FBI talking to Alan, Director Hoover, saying, hey, look at you, you're a hero and all, but I believe you're supposed to be working with the JSA. Alan's like, nah, man, I'm a solo act. I don't work with other people. It's fine. I didn't realize Alan was such a Batman. He goes off and feels like he's better off alone. There's also the implication that, fewer people get hurt when he's on his own. So there's also this sort of story there, too. But, Director Hoover gets what he wants, and he shows this file like, hey, look, I'm sure you don't want this getting out. By the way, next time I see you on the news, the JSA better be there. So we get this understanding that the agreement Hoover has with Alan is, well, Green Lantern, as he says, like, because this story here reveals that Hoover's feeling, yeah, I know you're Alan Scott, yeah. So he's trying to really sort of show his sort of control over not just Alan but the JSA as a whole. This sort of idea that the JSA, the Justice Society of America, is a sort of pro-American idea, this sort of pro-American superhero team, does sort of work in my mind. I'd like to see a bigger story about that told now. I do have one, but it's an old one, and I didn't get a chance to finish reading it. Someone make a note. I need to finish reading that. So Hoover shows the page like, hey, look, and it's a picture of a young Alan in the 30s with a young man. Pretty intimate. I wonder who took that photo. Well, actually, we do know who took that photo. Because now we flash back to 1936, and it's Alan and John in the army, and Johnny takes the picture. And it's an interesting, intimate moment here. Alan feels sort of conflicted as to who he is and what he's doing here. I think it really is him coming out, sort of being more comfortable with himself and with Johnny. And whether you like it or not, I think this might be the best way to tell this story, if you have to tell it at all. I think in a perfect world, we would just go, John, like, we see Alan go, like, yeah, I'm gay. And it was hard for me in the 30s. But that story is, I guess, interesting and worth telling. Tim Sheridan didn't want to talk about it, but he just sort of like, hey, buy this book. Stick it to Comicsgate. And I think Johnny has a good personality about him. He's got a good sense of humor. But I think Alan's also wrestling with the fact that at this time, it is illegal. And Johnny's sort of like, hey, yeah, if we get married, you gotta take my name because Johnny Scott sounds like a cleaning product. And I'm like, okay, there's some good humor to it, but at the same time, I don't know. Like, here's the thing, I wouldn't know how to tell the story. I wouldn't actually want to tell the story. It's just, like, it's just not something I would do. All right, I don't feel qualified to tell the story, so I wouldn't do it. But anyway, the real meat of the story, the actual interesting part, is why Alan is there. Alan is an engineer, and he's in the army to work on this new sort of crimson energy they found. They found at the bottom of the ocean that burns, like it's been burning for a long time. So the idea is they can harness this and control it. They can end this war in a day. There we go. So it's a big opportunity here. Johnny and Alan are thinking of, hey, maybe they can get some money, get a good paycheck going, get some cash, so they can go off somewhere and just be together. Maybe not married, but just live a nice, quiet, secluded life somewhere. And Alan does have some ideas of glory. This is a monumentous occasion here, if they do make this. This is effectively them attempting their own Manhattan Project before the Manhattan Project needs to happen. So, yeah, it's weird. We're attempting another atomic bomb. But anyway, we then cut to 1941, And Alan is very much your day-to-day hero with his super secret life. Like, I'm a handsome young man about town with many secrets. And that's what I'm into dudes. I'm also a superhero. And I guess his attaché, his Alfred, his major domo, is like, yeah, dude, who cares? Who cares if you're gay? Like, you're a good guy. I don't want to hear about what you do with your boyfriend, but whatever. You do you, man. All right, just work with the JSA. And it seems that again, Alan does sort of mention like, hey, fewer people get hurt, and I'm wondering if this implies there was another story in between the story we're getting in the past and now. But who knows? We then cut to an actual event happening. There's an emergency. Like, okay, fine, I'll don the ring. He takes off the ring he played around with John from, so his engagement ring, which was also in the pages of Earth 2. The sort of conduit for that Alan Scott's power of the green, like, was his engagement ring. So there's something cute to that. So Alan goes off like, I don't need the JSA. I'll be fine on my own because I'm Alan Scott and Green Lantern. I mean, I'm Green Lantern. I'm not Alan Scott. I don't know who Alan Scott is. He sounds like a very handsome man. Goes through. Then we cut back to what happened. There was an incident on the ship, and the reactor was going down. And this really sort of puts a sort of fear into Alan, as well as the fact Alan's trying to sacrifice himself to stop the this horrible experiment from going wrong. And then we cut to the present day, and Alan's like, I'm here to help. Yeah, what's going on? And the police go, well, you were just there. You took the guy, but when did you do red? And like, red, I don't. This is all green. I'm called the Green Lantern. Goes up like, oh, there it is. So he engages the green, like, wait, this seems familiar, this red energy. And he's like, I remember it. And we sort of get another flashback to those events when Alan agrees to sort of somewhat sacrifice himself to try to stop the reactor from exploding. And it does work, but that red energy grabs Johnny. And Johnny's pulled in, and we never saw Johnny again. You can kind of guess where this is going. So, anyway, Gerrick shows up as a Flash, like, hey, Green Lantern, glad to see you here. Here to help. Teamwork makes the dream work. And we're like, how dare you talk to me? I mean, so, yeah, sure. So who's this guy? As Alan recovers the guy, who they believe to be the gunman, Flash is up like, hey, Lantern, nice to see you. Is that the gunman? You're like, yeah, I found him on the roof. The roof? Well, I'm no expert, but it looks like he drowned. Like, drowned? And he's also got burns? Like, how do you drown and burn at the same time? And I was like, oh, crap. He looks at him like, oh, my God, how did I forget? I know who this is. This is Johnny! And the comic ends with what appears to be Alan Scott's conversion therapy, which was a really serious thing, not just in the 30s, but for most of the 1900s, as the comic ends. So, how do I feel about this? I think this sort of feels a bit disconnected in some ways. Are we here to talk about Alan Scott's time as being a gay man in the 1930s, or rather someone discovering his sexuality in the 1930s in the army during World War II? That has to be beyond stressful. It's hard enough trying to figure out who you are under normal circumstances. So there's that. But seeing Alan, I guess, try to slowly integrate himself into the JSA, I think is an interesting story. Does this story warrant another issue? Well, I would say yes. I mean, here's the thing. I like Alan Scott. I like Alan Scott's character. His sexuality does not matter to me. The continuity of the characters matter to me, though. Alright, so if Alan Scott never marries that woman, or those other women, and Jane Obsidian never born, we've taken two characters out of continuity. Alright, so what happens then? Do we rebrand them? Their entire history then just matters. It doesn't. Why does Alan care if Obsidian's gay? I think the story worked better if we saw Jay, the sort of man from 1930s, have to adjust to the fact that his son is gay. Alright, say that he wasn't the most tolerant person, and he wasn't a great person. He wasn't a great dad to his son. Alright? It's a very human thing, and I like that about characters. Yeah, 1930s, not everyone was tolerant. The conversion therapy thing, electroshock treatment, yeah, that was a thing. If anyone watched Downton Abbey, that's what Thomas was pretty much doing when he went away to, and got his ass infected. The saline treatments, trying to be normal, being like other men. It's a sad thing for that. And even worse, that people thought that was legitimate science. Um, that because to some people it worked, but whatever. Anyway, neither here nor there. I think the art is great. I don't think the emotion is there because we're telling two different stories at the same time. Actually, we're telling three, really. So we're telling the story of Alan and Johnny, Alan and the JSA, Alan and the return of Johnny. And I think we should have split those first two up. All right? We should have done like one solo issue of just Alan and Johnny, their relationship in the military, and then have that story end with Johnny being taken away. Then issue 2 should be just a continuation of this, Alan's day-to-day life, and going from there. Because this really sounds like Alan has had no one else in his life since Johnny. So, whatever. Time will tell. It always does. So our final one, this one, was actually where the hot tomatoes were. Alright? Jay Gerrick, the Flash. So, people may not know this. Jay Gerrick is my favorite Flash. Alright? Yes, I know. Someone who grew up during the era of Justice League Unlimited should be Wally. For someone who does respect Barry Allen, it might be Barry. I don't know enough about Bart to have an opinion of him, and I enjoyed just a quick moment when she was Liberty Bell. That was. I love Liberty Bell. But anyway. But Jay Garrick has always been this really fun character to me. It might be the hat. Like, it's heroes that take the time to wear a hat and own that hat are top tier heroes in my mind. But anyway, so a major character in Jeff Johns' story Stargirl: The Lost Children was Judy Garrick, aka Jay Garrick's daughter. And so when she came in, it was like the best scene in that entire JSA run for me was seeing Jay and Judy hug. That was great. Like, he remembered his daughter. His daughter was home. And again, loved it. So anyway, now we come back to 1963. Jay and Judy, this is the last mission they were on before she disappeared. And this is really to save Jay's wife, Judy's mother. And we've got a dam with some bombs on it. And Jay's like, okay, so she's run off to save Mom. Totally understandable. I'll deal with the dynamite. And it's really cool. I just love the fact that hat is there. And it's also just really cool design. He goes in, grabs him. Oh no, I missed one. The bomb, it goes off. The damn, I gotta. What up there? Like, this is pretty much everything every speedster does. But I love that Jay Garrick does it. So he goes in, he sees Joan, and Joan asks, "What about Judy?" And he's like, "Judy, like our daughter, like daughter, Joan, honey, you must be delirious. We don't have a daughter, ever since we had the doctor look you over." And she's like, "Oh, that's right, she can't have children," and that's how that story ends. That's the last time Judy's name was ever mentioned on the main Earth. So now, here she is in the present day, being reintroduced to her missing daughter. And it's great, it's tender, it's sweet, but there's also a bit of awkwardness to it. Like, Judy's super happy to see her mom. She's missed her all this time. Joan, by default, is over the moon. Jay's happy. But now the shock is really hitting Judy. That, she's been gone all this time. Time has moved on. Her room is no longer the same. But to her, she was just there. She was just in that room. And now it's just jumped ahead. And it was like, okay, so, they talk about... Judy has to justify there are more speedsters. There's a whole mess of them. All right? Barry, Wally, the Mexican one, Bart, Wallace, Jai, Irie, the Korean one, I think her name's Avery. It's just a whole mess of them. And so it's a lot to take in, and Judy feels somewhat out of time. But one thing she does see is, hey, a robbery going off. Like, all right, good. She knows how to deal with that. She introduced herself like, hey, the Boom is back. Like, who's the Boom? We don't know you. Jay comes in like, hey, I'm here. There we go. Everyone knows, like, that's the Flash. One of them goes off, and he wants to talk to Judy. And the conversation really is the fact that, Judy needs to, like, sort of calm down. This is sort of a weird moment for them because while Jay and Joan are sort of dealing with the fact their daughter's been missing all this time, all right, to Judy, she's always been a member of the team. She's qualified to handle herself for a simple robbery. Yeah, they had guns, but, she's done it before. But also the fact that, nothing feels right now. Everything feels too strange. And she even mentioned, like, hey, I've handled Dr. Elemental. I can handle some robbers. And they don't remember Dr. Elemental until she mentions the name. And that's the interesting thing. All right, something's going on, and it seems Dr. Elemental might be a key to it. So they have the memory where Judy goes in, and she lays the smack down on Dr. Elemental, like, dude, you kidnapped my mom. All right, you know the exact amount of hurt you're going to get for this. And she goes in. And he's like, yeah. And she even knocks the mask off for a bit. And she sees his face like, I know who you are. And then Judy disappears as it happens. And she seems to be removed from the continuity. But Dr. Elemental remembered Judy. So the question is, what's going on? He's using like, now is my time. So whatever's going on here, Dr. Elemental seems to be aware of her being gone. But the question is, where did he go all this time? We'll find out soon eventually. But anyway, that's how the comic ends. Gerrick the Flash, I think, is the best one because it sort of piggybacks directly off of Jeff Johns' JSA in that really great tender moment. As well as the fact that we were already invested in Jay and Judy. People by default already invested in Jay Gerrick. He's a great Flash. Judy Gerrick had a great design, had a great personality coming in. You couldn't help but like her. I believe Jeremy Adams is writing this. They just put the last name of the writer, so I'm pretty sure it's Jeremy Adams. I believe he's currently writing the Flash book, so that'll be nice too. You'll probably be able to tie some things together in that as well. That will help lend the story some more concrete, make it a bit more stable in the greater continuity. Honestly, this is the simplest story, and I think that's part of its strength. You look at something like Sandman. There's a whole other story going on here, a whole other mystery that will be a bit removed from everything else going on. Alan Scott's story is going to be hit or miss for some people. This is it's not a touchy subject, but it's one that has to be handled delicately. All right? No one, I think, is going to deny the fact that it would be very hard for a gay man to exist in the 1930s in the army during the war, trying to keep all this a secret. All right? Well, the question is, how does this work, and does it still endear us to Alan Scott? Because if the change is insignificant, you shouldn't have done it. And if you can't handle the change, you shouldn't have done it. So, it's a big change. Who knows what will happen? I don't know. I'm going to keep going. But again, the simplicity of Jay Gerrick's story and the amazing of Judy Gerrick, this is great. This is a character who's trying to act like nothing has changed, but also his daughter's saying, like, no, a lot has changed. All right, but I'm still the same person. It's sort of weird in some ways. Time has moved on, and the one thing Judy can sort of latch on to, her dad kind of doesn't want her to do. Or at the very least, it's too much too soon. And by default, Joan, has missed her daughter all this time because it's all of a sudden it's coming back to hey, she had a daughter. All right, the one thing she probably always wanted that she never could have is there. So it's an adjustment. Who knows how it'll work? Hopefully with an actual JSA team with the new, I could see a new JSA era, not the one Power Girl's doing with Huntress and recruiting Solomon Grundy, but just, one with this new generation of heroes, with the new Flash, the new Dr. Fate, the new Mr. Terrific. Well, still, actually you could do that. You could have Mr. Terrific as the current de facto leader of the JSA, and then leading all these other kids, along with Power Girl, and there you go. Yeah, we can ship Power Girl and Mr. Terrific. It's happened enough times. Do it. So anyway, with that in mind, which brings us to a close here. Again, the best book so far, in my opinion, is Jay Gerrick's The Flash. Simplicity is often the best route, and it doesn't have Riley Rosmo's art. So many stories are better without Riley Rosmo's art. Granted, again, Riley seems to have gotten better. Or at least is being less Riley, which sucks for Riley, but whatever. Like I said, we'll bring this video to a close. If you're new to the Bug Think Tank, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe. What was your favorite out of these 3 titles? Let me know in the comment section. I'll catch you all later. This is Bug Think Tank signing off. Thanks for watching. As always, may your fandom serve you well.